Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and things adjacent. Please remember to like the video. Please make sure to check if you are still subscribed. I want to start this video off with a few comments, viewer comments from the last video. This is from Gigabane. In response to the "Why We Can't Just Plant a Tree" article, he says, "This guy is all over the place. We all know that we cannot trust the efforts of government/business. The people's tree movement is meant to be about native species. We do not need fast-growing trees that suck up carbon, but with the intention of chopping them down and turning them into soil that will feed the next generation, returning all the nutrients back to the ground. We also know that no form of tree planting will work quick enough to solve climate change. The main point of us planting trees is to repair the biosphere, to stabilize weather, and to feed life. There are much better plants for directly fighting climate change. There is a plant out there that can clean water and double its mass in 48 hours, which is also nitrogen fixing. This plant is duckweed. Very recently, this plant has been tested for its food values, and they have just discovered that it is actually one of the rare few plants on the planet that is a natural source of vitamin B12. Incidentally, it seems that it is abundant in the places in Africa where human life began, making it very likely that our very health and evolution is tied to this lost food. As well as B12, it is a great source of protein, bioavailable plant iron, beta-carotene, leucine, and has enormous levels of omega-3. So what we have is basically a human superfood that can grow on all of our fresh water bodies, that can help keep those waters clean and can grow at a speed that is mind-numbing and far outpaces even the current exponential rate of climate change. If we grow enough of the stuff, it could end world hunger and turn billions of tons of carbon into soil in a very, very short time. Remember the names duckweed or water lentil. This plant is our hero if we get the word out and get some action going. Just think of it this way: for every 4 swimming pools worth of this plant we farm, we can produce 1 swimming pool a day of the stuff." Okay, interesting comment from Gigabane. I don't know if anybody else has any knowledge on this plant or can corroborate this information, but interesting nonetheless. And one more comment. This is from Andy the Gardener. "I can just hear Trump going on about his new forest initiative. Wilderness is an outdated concept, unattractive and inefficient. You can plant at least 10 clean, proper carbon-sucking baby trees in the same area as one useless old oak or whatever. Think of the increase in carbon removed and value gained from planting an efficient, modern forest where old-fashioned native woodland once stood. Every American needs to do their bit to pay for this plan. Travel more. I am encouraging EasyJet to plant a sapling from Walmart for every flight to Australia or hundreds of other worldwide destinations. In the future, every man, woman, child will be able to travel with a clearer conscience." Yes. Good comment from Andy the Gardener. Carbon offsets being a ridiculous joke. We don't need carbon offsets. We need carbon drawdown. Carbon pricing, carbon offsets are just ways to monetize carbon emissions and will likely not lead to anything good being done. So getting into some news. This is from Newsweek from December 27th. Record hit for most ice to melt in Antarctica in one day. Data suggests we are in a climate emergency. Just suggesting emergency. May I suggest emergency? Always good when those 2 words are used in the same sentence. The record in recent decades for the highest level of ice to melt in Antarctica in one day was reached on Christmas Eve, data suggests. Around 15% of the continent's surface melted on Monday, according to the Global Forecast System, GFS, by the National Centers for Environmental Prediction. The data comes from the Modèle Atmospherique Régionale, or MAR, a model used for meteorological and climatic research. Xavier Vetwijs, a climatologist at the University of Liège in Belgium, who tweeted the data on Friday, said that this is the highest melt extent in Antarctica in the modern era since 1979. He added, the production of meltwater is a record 230% higher than average since November this year. That's despite the melting season not yet being over. For the first time, Vetwijs said the melting seemed to explain a negative anomaly in data on Antarctica's surface mass balance. This is the net balance between what causes a glacier's surface to grow or deplete, for instance, because it evaporates or melts away. It should be noted this process is currently missing in most of SMB estimations over Antarctica, as melt has been negligible until now, but the climate is changing, Vetwijs says. Vetwijs told Newsweek Antarctica has been significantly warmer than average this melting season, but he stressed the data is from a model and not an in situ observation. The melting could be driven by a number of factors, and experts will need to wait 2 to 3 melting seasons to confirm what is going on. We have observed a crash of the Antarctica polar vortex just before this melting season, explained Vetwijs. Referring to low pressure near the pole, a weaker polar vortex allows warm air masses to reach easier the ice sheet, which is usually protected by its polar vortex, as was the case the previous summer. The fact that the sea ice extent is very low also enhances the possibility of warm air masses to reach the ice sheet. So what has been happening in the Arctic for the last at least 5 or 6 years, very steadily happening in the Arctic every single year, the incursion of warm air into the Arctic and the escape of cold air from the Arctic now seems to be transferring as well to the Antarctic. That is not good news on any level. Moving on to this article, Trump administration. So, real terrible things that Trump is doing while he is the president. Trump administration removes federal database that tracked pollution. ToxMap, an interactive online map that used various sources to track toxic pollution across the U.S., disappeared from the internet earlier this month, alarming environmental advocates, according to The Hill. The 15-year-old interactive map was beneficial to researchers and environmentalists. The National Library of Medicine, or NLM, part of the National Institute of Health, hosted it. Some of the information has moved to other sources, while some has just disappeared completely, as Newsweek reported. ToxMap offered detailed U.S. Environmental Protection Agency data for clearly labeled toxic release sites and offered extensive health and demographic data like mortality rates that users could easily overlay onto the maps. The various capabilities and wealth of data earned ToxMap a devoted following among researchers, students, activists, and other people eager to pinpoint sources of pollution, according to Undark. With little explanation, it was announced in September that the map would be taken down. Then it was removed last week, and the former URL, showed a message acknowledging its disappearance and ushered visitors to other potential sources of information, as Undark reported. Part of the decision was prompted by the increasing availability of the underlying data from the original sources, says NLM in a statement released to Undark. Many sources, such as the EPA, among others, offer several products that provide similar geographic information system functionality. Okay. The NLM added in its statement that much of the removed information could be found scattered amongst 9 other U.S. and Canadian government websites. Well, that's easy, isn't it? People who used the resource see the hiding of data and removal of information as part of the Trump administration's pattern of obfuscation and regulatory rollbacks of environmental policies, as Newsweek reported. It has been an ongoing occurrence, taking down of websites and taking down of information sites. Furthermore, the alternative of combing through 9 other websites takes away the consolidation of data in the user-friendly interface of ToxMap. Because this information has gotten so complex, excuse me, there's so much of it, it's very difficult for someone who's not really trained in the area to navigate it, said Chris Sellers, an environmental historian at Stony Brook University and a member of the Environmental Data and Governments Initiative, which monitors federal environmental data sources and advocates for greater public access to UNDARC. This tool actually cut through all the jargon, all the different interfaces that EPA, for instance, puts up before you get to the actual data that you're interested in. ToxMap's end accords with a larger pattern of spanning federal environmental agencies whose intentions have been far from quiet, even loudly trumpeted. Read a December article from the Environmental Data and Governments Initiative, according to Newsweek. The dismantling of such a usable public platform connecting health and environmental data certainly accords with the EPA's own declared strategies. Of seeking to exclude so many environmental health studies from policymaking and to neglect or defund ongoing environmental health investigations. I wonder why. It's weird because, I mean, there are plenty of environmentalists, activists, people concerned with the ongoing destruction of the biosphere, pollution, climate change, etc. And I don't know. It's weird though, because I just don't see a lot of people really getting up in arms around this stuff, or really taking the Trump administration to task around this kind of stuff. Certainly not politicians. But this is not good. This is not good because all of this will have to be reestablished once Trump is out of office. Please, dear Lord, let that be soon. Whether these parallels are intentional or not, our National Library of Medicine has now joined this administration's ideologically driven anti-science crusade. The article continued, effectively shrinking the public's access to environmental as well as disease and mortality data. I mean, the upshot is if you can't see it, it's not there. As with so many other fronts in the Trump administration's interlocking wars against science and environmental regulation, the prevailing hope seems to be that pushing the facts out of sight will diminish Americans' concerns about the environment. Of course, that works. Absolutely not. When you try to hide things from people, it makes them more concerned. When you try to deny science, it makes people more adamant about speaking about the science. Haven't we seen that in the last few years? The voices are growing louder, not quieter, not staying the same. They're much louder. Claudia Persico, an assistant professor at American University specializing in public administration and environmental policy, told UNDARC that CITES deprecation was a blow to researchers. I think it's really sad that they're getting rid of this. Anyways, not good. Let's go to more terrible things that are happening under the Trump administration. U.S. Steel announces up to 1,545 layoffs at plants near Detroit starting next year. So, the Trump was supposed to save all the jobs and boost the economy, there are so many indicators over the last 6 months that the economy is in deep, deep trouble, that we are teetering on the brink of a recession/depression, that the bottom that was barely supported after the 2008 recession was basically slapped a Band-Aid on. The Bush and Obama administrations just pumped a lot of money into Wall Street and into the banks and the automakers to try and prop up the economy, but did little to put that money back into actual people's hands. So it was a real shaky. It was total trickle down economics. Again, right? Here's this huge economic crash, and what we're going to do is prop up the people that caused the crash, and hope that this recovery trickles down to people, and really hasn't trickled down to people, and it still isn't trickling down to people. There are more homeless than ever before. There are record homeless people in California. It is wild. I mean, this is all people talk about in Los Angeles. Jesus Christ, the homeless situation is really insane here. It's out of control. The economy is not recovered on any level. There's no, more jobs for people. And, I see people keep touting this, hogwash about the economy recovering. It is not recovering. It is recovering for the elite. It is recovering for people on Wall Street. It is recovering for the stock market. And that is temporary, my friends. It is nothing but smoke and mirrors. Anyways, U.S. Steel announces up to 1,545 layoffs. Workers at a pair of steel plants in Ecorse and River Rouge will receive notices of potential layoffs starting next year. According to the Associated Press, 1,545 workers at Great Lakes Works will receive notices from the U.S. Steel Corporation as the company has plans to idle work at the plants. The company plans to begin idling the iron and steel making plants around April 1, while the hot strip mill rolling facility will be idle before the end of 2020. And what I've heard is all the signs point to these jobs being outsourced overseas. Again, exactly the thing that Trump said that he was not going to do and that he was going to reverse. And this is the actual truth of what has been happening under the Trump administration. This titled, "He Pulled the Wool Over Our Eyes. Workers Blame Trump for Moving Jobs Overseas." Trump pledged to stop offshoring, but manufacturing workers at GE and Carrier say Trump has broken his campaign promises. Next Friday, Eddie Martin will work his last day at the General Electric plant in Salem, Virginia. This is from July 2019. He will work his last day at the General Electric plant in Salem, Virginia, after working there for 7 years. GE announced in June last year it was shutting down the Salem plant, which opened in 1955. More than 250 employees were affected, as those jobs will be sent overseas to India. Martin is one such employee. These jobs will be going to India. Trump is an absolute liar when it comes to this stuff. Promises to save U.S. manufacturing and prevent American jobs moving abroad were a key part of Donald Trump's 2016 campaign, but since Trump took office in January 2017, nearly 200,000 jobs have been moved overseas. I believe there were more jobs in his first year as president shipped overseas than the last year of the Obama administration, something like 95,000 jobs. So it went up. It's been going up under his administration. This includes firms doing business with the U.S. government. According to the research by Good Jobs Nation, 14,444 jobs were moved abroad by the top 100 federal contractors in the United States in Trump's first 2 years in office. All right. Yeah, let's hire those American workers. The rate of offshoring among the top 100 federal contractors actually exceeds rates throughout the Obama administration and the majority of the Bush administration, aside from 2008 when the economic recession hit. Harley Shaken, a labor professor at UC Berkeley, says there has been relatively little change since Trump took office. Plant closings are devastating for the worker. It is damaging, and it can create the kind of stresses that cause divorces, break up families, and disrupt the ability to care for parents of young children. The kind of disruption creates far-reaching anxiety and anger, and we saw that politically expressed in 2016. So the situation has not changed, and that's why we are going into yet another election year with an anti-establishment outlook among voters. Things are not okay. Things are definitely not okay. And they're even more than not okay under Trump. Trump has lost a lot of goodwill, among some of his voters. I know some people think that his base is strong, but I hear a lot of people, you know, people working in all kinds of sectors, not just farmers in the Midwest, people, involved in shipping, people involved in exporting and importing goods from China. All kinds of people I've heard saying like Trump just totally fucked us over. Screw that guy. So there's a lot of bad feelings toward Trump now. So this is a good time to elect somebody who's transformative into office. Not just any old Democrat, not just any old status quo, not just any old slap a Band-Aid on the whole problem. We are going into big economic problems, most likely in the next year or two, and we're going to need somebody who's willing to do bold things, to take bold action, a transformative person who is going to really get at the root of the cause of the rot in our system. And we all know who that is. That would be Bernie Sanders. Yeah, not good. Not good. If you think the economy is doing better, I don't know. Just open your eyes and look around you. Just talk to people. Look at the homeless people on the street. It's better for some, bad for many. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. If you would like to support this channel, you can do so at the links below. Until next time, peace.